Yeah, so do get your comments coming into us over the next while. Here's a bit of a flavour of what's happening. Quick run through what's happening at the back pages this morning. This is the Irish Examiner. This story is on a lot of the back pages today. It's GAA, and it's disturbing and dangerous. The quote here from President John Horan, who demands an end to spate of GAA flashpoints. That's the Irish Examiner this morning. In the Irish Independent, very much a similar theme here. Horan admits GAA must get tougher on club violence. We must learn from World Cup mistakes so we don't repeat them in Japan. Newsflash, writes Johnny Sexton here in a nice photograph as well of Cian Lynch and Aaron Gillan, who graduated yesterday, the Limerick All-Ireland champions. That's the Irish Independent. In the Irish Times today, it's rugby all the way here. Sexton urging Leinster to bounce back to form and intensity of first start against the All Blacks made Sexton vomit. It turns out I'm not the only one who can't deal with high-level sport without having to sort of go through the ringer a little bit, Dave. That is the...
Yeah, and they're in the comparisons with Johnny Sexton, begin and end.
The Times Ireland edition, finally for me, is Schmidt exit would not be the end of the world. Johnny Sexton, who was out before the media clearly with all these quotes yesterday, it's expected that Joe Schmidt will make a decision on his future before the end of the year. Obviously, contract running up to and after the World Cup of next year. More Europa paying for Celtic, and King will lose his Ireland under-21 job.
The Herald Sports section goes with a positive angle on the Republic of Ireland. Reid keeps faith alive. Former Irish international turned coach dismisses doom and gloom over future of football here and remains confident that Ireland's fortunes will improve. There's a photograph of Troy Parrott on the front of the Herald Sports section. Back page of the Irish Daily Mail is stick with us. Sexton urges Schmidt to sign new deal while Horan breaks his silence over acts of violence. We've also got what a cheek. Ruben hits hat-trick. Chelsea 3, Bate 1, Arsenal also 1-0 winners against Sporting Lisbon last night. On the back page of the Irish Daily Star, it's no more excuses. Jose should expect sack, says Paul Ince. Ruben fires a cheeky treble, and Sexton says we have to get it right. And you've also got those John Horan comments there, slamming the violence in Club GAA as we've seen over the past couple of weeks and months. Back page of the Mirror then is sack close for Jose. Old Trafford legend Ince says Mourinho is out of excuses and the club are now going backwards, while President in plea to GAA thugs, and all's well that ends well for Gunners as they get that 1-0 win in Portugal. Back page of the Sun then, tell us you want a Real job. Madrid gives Spurs boss last chance. So Real Madrid are making a desperate last-ditch bid to land Mauricio Pochettino, despite the fact that Antonio Conte is currently the favourite to replace Julian Lopetegui and frown in the dumps. This is an exclusive by David Woods. It says, Jose Mourinho fears he is not getting the full support of the Manchester United top brass. And John says, hit him hard. That's with regards to the brawls and the Club GAA violence. The back page of the Racing Post.
Have a good morning to you over there, I'm sure, is it?
Tell us you want a Real job?
Yeah. No, the one, what was the one at the top of
it? John says, hit him hard.
No, the very top of it.
That is the very top.
Right.
Frown in the dumps?
Yes, that's the one, yeah.
It's
tab of the morning?
It's fine. It's
right.
Fine.
Fair enough.
Yeah, maybe. I'll give it to you if you really want that to be tab of the morning. Some mornings, Adrian, we don't have a tab of the morning to you. We only give tab of the morning out on very exceptional circumstances. Villains can steer clear of trouble then is the back of the Racing Post. QPR against Aston Villa tonight at 7:45. And a couple of the UK back pages then. The Guardian this morning is Sporting 0, Arsenal 1, and England's double act. Farrell insists joint captains on same page for a long time. So it's going to be Owen Farrell and Dylan Hartley who hold the England joint captaincy. And the front page of the Daily Telegraph sports section, finally, Loftus-Cheek hits a hat-trick. Midfielder grabs chance with stunning European treble as Chelsea bait Borisov 3-1.
Just slipped it in there.
He did, quietly. Right, a few of these stories that have jumped out at us that we want to give you a bit more depth on. We're going to talk about those John Horan comments about violence in the GAA. The top six against the rest is the thoughts of Miguel Delaney in the Independent this morning, so those coming your way shortly. Tiger against Phil and the prices that will cost you if you want to buy it on pay-per-view, because you can't go to it. No entrance for the general public for the showdown on November the 23rd. Michael Lowry's delighted with the Twitter storm around the Simon Zebo pointing incident last weekend, and Pochettino to Madrid. So, We're going to start off with John Horan, and he was out before the media yesterday, and clearly top of the agenda was discussion about whether the GAA needs to step in and take action when it comes to a lot of the scenes of violence that we've seen from around the grounds over the last few weeks particularly. Some of the quotes that have jumped out at me here, and feel free, both of you, to jump in wherever you want on this one. Violence has no place in our games, warns President, is the article that I've picked out here from John Fogarty in the Examiner, and the quotes specifically that sort of jumped out for me were from John Horan saying, for the purpose of clarity, incidents that arise at local level are a matter for the organising committee in charge within that county to deal with. He says these issues are small when set against the backdrop of the thousands of games that are played nationwide in the proper manner and spirit. There's nothing in these quotes that I've seen that sort of suggests that the GAA are going to actually step in and understand that this is a serious issue, that despite the fact that the rule book doesn't govern for them to necessarily step in and take action in the general course of things, it doesn't seem to acknowledge that these are exceptional and very serious incidents that maybe the GAA need to do a little bit more than they need to go beyond the rule book a little bit.
Well, I don't know if they can go beyond the rule book. The other debate is that maybe rules need to be changed, and there needs to be a far more obvious and streamlined set of rules and punishments for various crimes within the GAA. So you know exactly what he's going to lie in store if you commit a certain offence. That's the problem at the moment. No one really seems to know what the minimum and maximum offences should be. There's too many mitigating factors. There's too many ways to get around the rule book. There's so many loopholes in the GAA's disciplinary system. In my opinion, the hands of the top brass, if you want to call them that, I know they hate us referring to them in those terms, in Croke Park, their hands are tied in a lot of ways. Like, I don't know how many of these types of incidents take place every week, but you would imagine that the vast majority of these all-out melees are actually been brought into the public domain by the use of camera phones at the moment, that this isn't happening, say, 10 times a weekend and we're only seeing footage of 3 of them.
That doesn't matter though, really.
No, but my point being that there are probably enough incidents to make it an absolute nightmare for the GAA at central level to have to try and deal with them on a case-by-case basis.
It's a national crisis, in my view, Dave. I think the fact that 10 of these incidents aren't happening every week it doesn't matter.
No, but the point I'm making is
we've had 10 incidents in the last 2 or 3 months, which is far too much.
To centralise it, they don't. The GAA do not have the resources at central level to be dealing with each of these cases.
Or maybe they just need to employ somebody separately to do it. Like, I mean, because if the alternative is that we continue to see this violence year after year, that's totally unpalatable. And like, for me, I understand the point about you're making about the rule book and their hands are tied to a degree, but I would like to see stronger language from the top man in the GAA coming out and saying that, you know, at the minute, here's where we're at on it, we can take action, but the rule book needs to be flung at these people. They have no place in our game. The language for me in this is a bit too conciliatory. It needs to be black and white, and it needs to be clear, and it needs to say that if in future we are going to put legislation in place, laws in place.
So what types of laws do you mean?
Stringent laws that, because
like, for example, the penalty that was given to the Dingle official, for example. Yeah. Now, firstly, I thought calls for a lifetime ban for this guy were way off the mark.
Why?
Because if you're going to hand a lifetime ban down to everybody who throws a punch in the GAA, you're going to be
a mentor on a player.
That means, but no, it just means that there's absolutely no scope for a second chance. There's no scope for rehabilitation. There's no scope for guys to change their ways.
But you know what,
Dave? There's no scope for guys to learn their lessons.
We're so far away from a lifetime ban. 8 weeks?
Well, yeah, but the next point was going to be 8 weeks is an absolute joke. Yeah. But we know that within the rule book there was far more scope for a ban of more than 8 weeks. 8 weeks was the minimum that he could have got.
So
and
on that
lo
basis,
and behold, by a fellow Kerryman on whatever disciplinary board he faced, they turn around and they give him 8 weeks, which was the minimum. So
on that basis,
they basically did what they could get away with.
Why is John Horan not stepping in and saying Kerry only did what they could get away with? They should have given, that was reprehensible behaviour from a mentor on a player.
Because you can understand why the GAA president does not want to be commenting on a specific case such as this. Well, because then he'll be asked, well, what about this case and what about that case? People want to comment on every case.
But the difference with this case is that it's happened. It's been heard, whatever sort of judicial process has gone on in the background, he's been given his ban, so it's actually been seen through to the end, which a lot of these cases are still either just, there's not going to be any action taken against them, as it seems is the case in some of them, and then other of them are still in play. I think it befits the president to come out and say, I read the quotes today, and I certainly had no sense that Oh, that's great. It really seems like the GAA are taking this seriously.
No, there's nothing hard-hitting about John Horan's comments. And you maybe feel that his language could have been a lot stronger. I don't believe he should be commenting on a specific case, so I'm not surprised he didn't go into the detail on what we saw in Dingle, or indeed Up and Down, or any of the other incidents we've seen, and there have been so many of them. I mean, we must be approaching 10 at this stage over the last 3 or 4 months alone. But a more general comment on it might have been, you might have expected that from him. I'm sure he and the people that he works with in Croke Park had sat down and they were quiet for so long, far too long. It did take an awful long time for the GAA to actually come out and say something on this that's been boiling up over the last 12 weeks or so. But I'd say they sat down and they talked amongst themselves about what they would say if or when the microphones were put in front of them. This was the best they came up with. But I don't know if it's possible to centralise this, and that's the issue. For me, the biggest issue is that the punishments are not stringent enough. Now, that guy shouldn't be seen anywhere near a GAA pitch for a year, at the very minimum, in my view. I think a lifetime ban is something that I wouldn't want to see that. Like, we don't know, I don't know this guy personally, we don't know what he's done for the GAA in previous years. For all we know, he spent the last 35, 40 years in the GAA, and he's helped children, and he's brought teams up from under 12s
at the same time, Dave,
and he's given 30 hours of his week to the GAA.
There is a line somewhere there. At the same time, there is a line somewhere, right?
But a lifetime ban, I think, would be crazy. But he shouldn't be allowed to be any GAA involvement for 12 months, at the absolute minimum. And I think if you are passionate about the GAA and you're prevented from doing anything GAA related for a year, that would soften your cough. And there's no question that the best way to deal with these situations is to hurt a larger group of people. So one guy getting banned for a year is not going to snuff this out.
Yeah, blanket ban is the way.
It needs to be a blanket club ban. And that's why we saw what happened Up and Down, and we think that is the way to go. Now, should Dingle be thrown out of the championship? Should all of their adult teams be thrown out of the 2019 championships?
Well, they probably should at the start to try and actually do something about this, because, as you say, the ban, the current rules that they're allowed to place down to these sort of incidents are way too soft. Now, the thing is, Kerry GAA know what the rule is. It's Rule 2A. They've seen Davy Fitzgerald get the same rule. They've handed down the same punishment to Stephen Wallace last year. They know that this is an 8-week ban, and within the rules, that's fine. Why would Kerry GAA say to themselves, well, we want to be the outlier here, we want to be the ones who take this upon ourselves? So on your point in centralising it, that's why centralising it is the right decision, because then you're not discriminating against any one county, or one county doesn't feel like they have to step out of line to try and make a big point. I think the quotes this morning show just a growing disconnect, and the disconnect that we all know is there between the top brass and between club GAA. John Horan say it's a problem for the relevant authorities. Of course, we condemn the behaviour, but it's a problem for the relevant authorities. The sooner Central Council, the sooner Croke Park take on board or take control of a lot of this, the better. And this doesn't just go for disciplinary issues. This goes for fixtures, as we're going to be talking to with Paul Flynn in a little while. And that disconnect, the trouble is there. That's why we have a problem.
I think it's harsh when you refer to people like John Horan, or indeed prior to him, Pádraig Duffy, when he was in the Irish Juror position, as guys who have no connection or have a complete disconnect with the club game. Like, these guys are club men. They have given their entire adult lives to their clubs. And to just...
That's not what I'm saying.
Well, in some ways it is that when you refer to John Horan or Pádraig Duffy or any of the guys in the positions of power within Croke Park as being completely disconnected from the club game, I do think that's really unfair, because these guys are not disconnected from the club game on an individual basis. Now, maybe as a group, but where the GAA has gone commercially and the way it is so elite now at the top level of intercounty hurling and football, it's inevitable that you're going to have a little bit of a step away from the grassroots, because they have so much to deal with that is disconnected from the club game.
Well, that's my point. I'm not saying that John Horan isn't a club man. I'm not saying that John Horan doesn't care about the club game. I'm saying that as a whole, as a body, as Croke Park, it seems that the issues of the club game aren't high priority. And maybe, as you say there, maybe there's realistic reasons for that. Maybe time constraints, maybe the list of things on their priority list just precludes Club GAA from being a factor. Well, there needs to be something else. There needs to be some sort of centralised body that looks after Club GAA, because clearly the case-by-case basis is just not working. But
it's because the rules, there is no deterrent. That's the problem. I think the GAA...
Who creates that deterrent?
Well, the GAA need to, instead of getting themselves involved centrally on every single major incident, they need to look at the rule book, they need to look at the laws, and they need to look at the penalties, and that's what needs to be changed. So if this guy in Dingle, we keep singling him out because it's more than him that's involved in this sort of messing, if he received an automatic 1-year ban, then we would have looked upon this case and thought, that's the GAA disciplinary system working as it should do. We're appalled at the 8 weeks, because it does not send a signal in any way to anybody out there that might lose their cool on the side of a GAA pitch and go after a player or a fellow mentor or somebody in the crowd.
A point that you touched on earlier on, the reality is that if he'd been given a year or any more than that, he would have gone through all the legal loopholes that exist. We've seen
the appeals process then is something that needs to be looked at.
It's laborious and it's full of holes, and by and large what happens is that people end up getting off.
But GAA dealing with these sort of incidents at a central level would have absolutely no impact on that. That's a cultural thing. It's do whatever you possibly can, and it's probably, in fairness to GAA, it's not just a GAA related thing, it's probably more an extension to the Irish societal psyche as well, that we'll do whatever we possibly can to get ourselves off this charge. It happens in all walks of life.
But the GAA, the violence though is like, it pains me to say it, but it is patently GAA, it seems, in recent times. Like, name one other sport where you've seen
I haven't seen it happening, and I played adult soccer for a long time, and I never saw a brawl that involved more than 2 or 3 people. Not once. I played rugby. I was at a lot of rugby matches over the years. I've never seen anything like that outside of interprovincial and international level. To me, it is, unfortunately, I wouldn't go as far as saying GAA specific, but it's certainly heavily weighted towards the GAA.
Heavily weighted, exactly. And my point is that as the president of the organisation, he clearly cares deeply about the organisation. As you say, he cares deeply about Club GAA. Like, I would say it as a personal offence. I'm not sure about you guys, but certainly looking at all the scenes we've seen, particularly in Kerry for myself last week, it was a horrendous thing to watch. It's horrendous to think that the very sporting fibre that you probably love more than anything else is being tarred horrendously with this sort of behaviour. Like, that should be a personal offence to John Horan that this sort of stuff is going on. And my point, Dave, is that those quotes this morning don't seem that the man is personally offended by it. And maybe he like, as you say, there was a conversation. They're like, right, we need to be balanced here. We can't really say too much. We'll work hard behind the scenes, but let's not make any big headlines.
Here's one of the points. If I'm one of those clubs that's involved in those and I read those quotes, I'm not going, woof, there's a train coming down the track here. It's like sort of business as usual.
Yeah,
the Dingle situation, apart from that punch that was thrown, there was a lot of handbags. You know, it wasn't as unsavoury as the other incidents that we've seen. Like, you can single this one individual for punishment. It was a little different from what happened up and down, where there's a number of players jumping into the crowd, for example, and that's why those clubs were thrown out of the championship. You know, I mean, throwing Dingle out of the championship in this case probably would have been unfair, because there was really just a lot of pushing and shoving, a lot of jostling. There was nothing overly violent involved until we saw this one punch. Now, one thing, a step beyond this might be the Gardaí, for example, looking at video footage, and it just takes one member of the public to make a complaint against somebody for the Gardaí to be forced to take a look at something. And if there was another incident similar to this, if charges are brought, because if that guy had done what he did, I know this old cliche, if he'd done that on the street, he's facing jail time. So you have to think maybe somewhere down the line that maybe outside forces need to get involved in this kind of thing. That's actually the point that John Horan himself is making. Violence is violence, I think, is the exactly.
Separating themselves from the issue again.
Yeah, just because you're inside the 4 white lines, and it means that you can get away with something that you wouldn't get away with in the civilised world. It doesn't really stack up for me.
A couple of quick comments before we go on to the next story. Mike Toomey on Twitter says that on Owen's point about it being a national crisis, that it's an ongoing crisis for 10 or 20 years. On YouTube, Paul Mack says, time to act now. The next punch could be someone falling and taking a fatal injury.
Exactly.
And Dave B says, finally on this one for the minute, GAA clubs need to address the violence. Parents will move children to rugby and other sports with more respect.
How can the GAA club address the violence on their own?
More respect to other players and the ref.
How is a GAA club going to act in this? If you leave the responsibility with the GAA club, what's Dingle going to do?
No.
It's like nothing. Like, a county board is not even going to sort this out, as we've seen. Like, why would Kerry want to scupper Dingle's chance?
I don't want to have misrepresented. I read out what he sent in, but the gist of it, I think, is what he's saying is that the GAA need to address it. His point being that if it's not addressed, I'm not suggesting that he's got a path to how this works. I think what he's saying is that if it isn't addressed, kids will just move on to other sports. I think that's his point.
It's the last thing I'll say. I just think it's of vital importance that this is centralised. And I know you kind of disagree with elements of that. It is of vital importance that it's centralised, because on a case-by-case basis, counties looking after their own, like, we're all biased towards our own counties. It's what we love. It's where we come from. that is going to blur your lines. It's going to blur what actually needs to be done, because drastic action needs to be taken for this to be changed, because it's a cultural thing.
The difficulty with centralising is the evidence is there to suggest that also doesn't work.
Well, that's true as well, but I think it's certainly a better course of action than the current path we're going down, which is pathetic.
Right, what have we got next on the Miguel Delaney piece? I think we were going to talk about. That was your...
Yeah, it's
piece from the Irish Indo.
A growing gap between the top 6 in the Premier League and the rest. He says that in total of 120 points that were available this year to the big 6, 105 have been claimed. Only 15 have been dropped, and 8 of those have been dropped by Manchester United, who are going through their own problems. Basically, we had the big 4. We thought that was going to move away from the rest of the Premier League. That didn't necessarily happen when we've now got a big 6, but this is even more instilled in concrete than the big 4 was. And we talk about a disconnect. You can talk about 6 and 14 in the Premier League for sure, that it's 6 in the rest, and it's as wide a gap as there's ever been.
Yeah.
That's something I tend to agree with.
I kind of, like, I actually think a big 6 is great. Like, a big 6 is better than a big 4. Like, a big 10 would be better than a big 6. Do you know what I mean? Like, actually 6 teams being competitive.
How far are you going to take this?
I'm just saying that I think that actually, I would sort of argue the opposite. That I think a big 6 is a pretty good state of affairs for any league. When you look at some of the leagues around Europe who are crying out for that number of competitive teams. I actually look back on some of I just took a random sample earlier on the basis of that piece and just looked back at some of the tables from randomly from years back. So in 96, United, Newcastle, Liverpool top of the league, and then an 8-point gap to 4th. So that was a big 3 to all intents and purposes at that point. 97, United won by 7 points. So, 16 points between them and Chelsea. After that, 98, 1 point between Arsenal and United at the top, and then 12 points back to Liverpool in 3rd, and 20 points between 1st and 6th. So, I think actually we're not in a bad. I think we're in a good place.
Well, I'm as enthused 9 games into a Premier League season now as I have been probably at any time. Looking at the table, what is it? 2 points separating the top 5. Which is an incredible state for the Premier League table to be in, almost a quarter of the way into the season. I personally do think it's great. We had a real disconnect last season whereby the drop-off between 7th and the rest of the table was absolutely huge, where I think 8th place in the table was closer to the bottom team than it was the top team. So that this is not specific or individual to this particular season, but we have had too many, since Leicester won the title, we've had 3 campaigns in a row now that have just not captured the imagination in any way. Last two, Chelsea and Manchester City. Now that was based primarily on both clubs going on a run between November and February where they were winning double-digit games in a row, and that for that reason the league title was done by mid-December, early January. I think it could change this year, although there are signs that Manchester City are just clicking into gear now, may go on one of those runs where they pick up 30 out of 34 or 35 points. So overall, I'm not worried by this. If you look at, it's actually continentally wide at the moment. Look at Germany. Suddenly we've got a title race in Germany. The situation in Spain, where Real Madrid, Barcelona, everyone's dropping points. This time last year, Barca were running away, Bayern were running away with it. So things are changing. For now, it could be just temporary though.